streaming live across the country, tackling the topics everyone is talking about online. Share, engage, and interact. This is Newsfeed Now.
And a good finally Friday to you. Welcome into Newsfeed Now. I am Aaron Nolan. If you don't know about our show, well, we are here on this website each and every day, Monday through Friday, bringing you some news that you can use all across the country. We are a national broadcast, and I'll tell you what, guys, each and every day seems to get a little bit longer here during 2020, and June is no exception. It is only June the 5th, and I promise you guys, it feels like it is the 5th week of June. All right, let's get things started. Yesterday was the first memorial for George Floyd. Family, friends, and supporters joined together to honor him. Camila Bernal has the latest from Minneapolis.
George Floyd was remembered Thursday in Minneapolis at the first of several memorials planned in his honor.
When you spoke to George, they felt like they was the president because that's how he made you feel.
At one point, attendees standing in silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the same amount of time one officer kept his knee on Floyd's neck as he died. Video of Floyd's death while in police custody has sparked nationwide protest and a broader discussion about the inequalities of race in America.
Not two justice systems in America, one for Black America and one for white America. What we endeavor to achieve is equal justice for the United States of America.
Meanwhile, the four former Minneapolis police officers present at Floyd's death have all been arrested and charged. Derek Chauvin charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. The three others charged with aiding and abetting Chauvin. Minnesota officials acknowledge the case will be difficult to prosecute.
It's very difficult to hold the police accountable even when there's a violation of law.
And Reverend Al Sharpton said the push towards equality will continue.
You changed the world, George. We're going to keep marching, George.
In Minneapolis, Minnesota, I'm Camila Bernal reporting.
Camila, thank you so much. Trending this morning, Twitter blocking a Trump campaign video tribute to George Floyd. This over a copyright claim, a move that heightens tension between social media and the president. One of its mostly widely followed users is Donald Trump on Twitter. The Trump campaign claimed it is being censored. The video is still up, though, on President Trump's YouTube channel. Turning to Michigan, where a brief and bizarre face-off is getting a lot of attention online. A bat-wielding senior citizen who took to the streets in East Grand Rapids, Michigan, and tried to turn back a group of protesters peacefully pushing for change. Susan Samples has the story.
If you weren't sure their intent, you needed only to listen to their chant, peaceful protest. But then this, smack in the middle of wealthy east of Plymouth, a bat-brandishing grandma, and a scramble to diffuse any potential confrontation. One protester tried to take the bat away from her, while another put his arms around the 75-year-old to move her to the sidewalk. Later, after most of the march moved on, a war of words.
These people. I'm part of these people. What do you mean by these people? What do you mean? You live here? Yes. Born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan, my whole life. Grand Rapids. This is private property.
That's when a man told the protesters they were on private property.
You wouldn't be here if she didn't come out with a baseball bat.
I'm going to protect my property. You have no right to riot.
Her name is Carla Anderson, and she thought the protesters would vandalize East Grand Rapids like rioters had downtown GR days before.
This is not about Black Lives Matter. This is about racial division, okay? And keeping things stirred up.
Anderson is convinced Antifa, a far left-wing group that's had violent confrontations, was involved in the march, though we found no such evidence. Some people would say that you're racist.
We don't have that here. You can ask anybody around.
Why did you have the bat?
Just to show that, you know, I was willing to defend East.
Would you have used it?
If I was attacked,
No one was attacked. Instead, it was an hours-long peaceful demonstration punctuated by a bizarre scene. In the end, a protester with the obvious question.
What the was that?
Susan joins us now from Grand Rapids. Susan, first things first, I'm interested into the response that you've seen from your station, from your website, about this grandmother. What has the social reaction there in that part of Michigan been like?
Well, I just checked, and the Facebook post has like 800 or so comments. Largely people denouncing what this grandma did. A few people saying, well, she's scared. Did you see what happened in downtown Grand Rapids? Of course she's scared. And why are you putting her out there? But the vast majority of people were saying, holy cow, are you serious? This woman went out in the middle of the street, and these were peaceful protesters, and what was she thinking? So, and also I noticed that a lot of people were giving a lot of kudos to the protesters for making sure to keep her safe in what could have been a really volatile situation. So I was happy to see a lot of people recognizing that those protesters did a great job, particularly the guy who put his arms around her, to keep her safe. So that was great to see.
All right, so she mentioned in the piece that she was trying to protect her property, but she was standing in the middle of a public street. Kind of walk me through, in your conversation with her, the thought process and her feeling that she needed to do this to protect her property.
Well, she's clearly a very outspoken person, and I have to say initially when I went to find her, I was a little bit concerned about her mental state and what was going on there, and I actually did check some court records to make sure that there were no issues with her in terms of, I don't know, dementia, or I hate to say that, but I was a little bit like, what is this woman thinking? But when I talked to her, she seemed very with it, and was not, or said she was not afraid, and said she felt like she had to protect her East. She kept calling it her East. East Grand Rapids, have to protect it. You saw what happened, and I'm not going to let this happen to the place where I grew up, and we have to keep it safe here, and kids need to be able to ride their bikes to the ice cream store. And she was just certain that in that protest, Antifa was in there, and while they seemed initially peaceful, they were going to come in and burn down the city. She felt like she had to go to the middle of the street.
All right, Susan, I want to ask you.
She's outspoken. She said, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask you one more question, because I didn't understand it in the story. Thinking about it now, I think I've got it, but I want you to clarify this. Her statement that says, quote, "This is not about Black Lives Matter. This is about racial division and keeping things stirred up." What did she mean by that?
Well, she's talking about Antifa and saying that she thinks that this is, the far left, sometimes aggressive group that tries to stir things up. And she didn't say this, but I assume she probably thinks that they're trying to stir it up to maintain a division, or to drive an even deeper division, to perhaps impact politics and the upcoming election. She didn't talk about the election, but that was the vibe I was getting from her, that she felt like people wanted to deepen the division in our country because it would benefit someone politically.
Yeah.
That
all
was
right.
my impression.
As we wrap up, did anything out of this protest turn violent, turn to riots out of this specific protest that this woman thought was going to turn that way?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It was completely peaceful, I'm happy to say.
All right. Susan, thanks so much. Appreciate you taking the time. I honestly, and I've been very open about the way that this show works. I purposely don't watch stories in order for me to watch them for the first time and get that full emotional response. I got to be honest, I didn't expect that story when I read the headline that says Bat Granny. So very interesting stuff there. You can tell protesting still happening, the concern for rioting and the damage and the destruction still in people's mind. Let's move forward now to the Gulf Coast. Thousands are bracing for a tropical storm. It's called Cristobal, which is expected to affect the southern United States in the coming days. This is video inside Cristobal. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards has issued an emergency declaration for the state in advance of the storm. Chris Cozart is our meteorologist down in Lafayette, Louisiana. Chris, kind of walk us through what you're seeing right now and really the impact that the United States will see, because Cristobal really started off really far down in the Caribbean, and it's kind of made its way up the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, it actually started off as a tropical storm in the Pacific. It was Amanda, and it went over Central America where it fell apart, and the remnants of Amanda eventually came to be Cristobal. And then it's been spinning in the southern parts of the Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche for the last several days, bringing unrelenting rainfall across South Mexico, Honduras, Central America, those areas, and they're continuing to see that as well. Now, Cristobal is a tropical depression now. The dry air is really impacting what we're seeing here. A lot of moisture plume on the right side or the east side of the system, with the drier air on the west side of the system. So this will be a very disorganized tropical system, tropical storm, as it will finally get its act back together, getting into the southern Gulf of Mexico, back in the open waters here over the next 24 hours. Tropical storm watches being posted now across the southeastern coast of Louisiana, over towards Mississippi coast and the Alabama coast. That goes until Monday. And here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center as it continues to keep it a tropical depression at this point. But in the next 12 hours, as we get into this evening, it should go back into the open waters of the Gulf, where it will reorganize and strengthen a little, not a lot here. We're still looking at a modest to strong tropical storm making landfall now Sunday night into early Monday morning, with most of the impacts being felt east of center. So even if you're not in this cone of uncertainty, there could still be heavy rains and some flash flooding issues even for the panhandle of Florida with this.
Chris, as I look at your map behind you, clearly you can see that this storm that is deep in the Gulf of Mexico right now is going to affect several different states. Louisiana, Alabama, Arkansas, probably Memphis, Tennessee could see some rainfall. Is rainfall the main concern here, or do you think there could be that chance of maybe this thing spinning up a tornado or two?
We always have that issue with the possibility of a tornadic activity. That will be mainly, again, on the east side or the right side of that system. So tornadoes will be an issue. I think it's a small threat, but it will be there. But it's mainly a heavy rain event. If you're within this cone of uncertainty, really where it's expected to make landfall, like here in Acadiana, we will see the full brunt of the winds. We're expecting around 30 to 60 mile per hour winds as early as Sunday morning, going into Sunday night and Monday. Maybe some gusts a little bit stronger than that. And this system will keep on chugging up to Arkansas, like you said, but it could also go all the way as north as Wisconsin, bringing heavy rains to them as well.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time, Chris. As journalists, we cover the news. Normally, we don't want to be a part of the news, but that happens. I remember a time when I was covering flash floods, and there was a manhole, and I stepped on the manhole, and the water underneath pushed that manhole around, and I nearly fell down the manhole. There was a firefighter standing very close by. I tell that story quite a bit. This one is kind of like that. A man was lost while floating along a river in Oklahoma, and the news crew was there, spotted him, pulled him to safety, waiting for authorities to get there. Cassandra Sweetman has the story.
I was almost done. That was everything I had left in me.
David Stokes clinging to life in the North Canadian River.
Keep my head above the water, and that was it.
Chopper 4 already in the air when pilot Mason Dunn and managing editor Steve Johnson got a call to action. Police telling them this.
Somebody might be in the river, that they were looking for someone who was missing.
David missing for more than 20 hours, separated from his friends during a float trip. With only one leg, he didn't have the strength to make it to shore. The clock ticking as News Force crew flew down the river.
I heard you. And I was hoping you heard or you saw me.
Chopper 4, truly a sight for sore eyes. Mason landing in a sandbar nearby. Steve Johnson not thinking twice.
I ran out of the chopper, just dragged him up to the shoreline.
But the struggle wasn't over. The area so remote, Pottawatomie County Sheriff's deputies and the Shawnee search and rescue crews unable to find it after searching all night.
I had to lift off there and fly to the airport and pick up the sheriff and fly them down there.
More help, able to airlift David to an Oklahoma City hospital.
Without your helicopter, knowing that you guys were landing, I wasn't swimming to the bank.
While News Force crew landing back at the station, weary but grateful.
It just gave me chills.
I would do that again in a heartbeat.
Looking out for you, that's our motto, and that's means something to me.
All right, you saw him in the piece. Steve joins us now from Oklahoma City. Steve, we talk about that whole adage of not being part of a story, but you got a situation where you didn't have a choice because it was life and death.
You know what? It really was. We were out covering another story, and our assignment desk told us to head to this area to look for a guy in the river. And, we spotted him. Something didn't look right. We found a place to land. I jumped out, and there wasn't really any thought about it.
Steve, is this all cell phone video? I'm assuming you're behind the camera taking some video here?
I didn't see the package, but part of it was, the overhead shots. That was from our chopper camera. And then everything else on the ground was all cell phone. It was so remote, nobody could get in there. The chopper pilot flew back to an airport to pick up a deputy to bring him back out there. So he left me with the guy for a short time while he went to go get the deputy. And then there were a couple other police officers that were able to show up using four-wheelers. But it was so remote. There was only really the only way to get in was through a chopper.
20 hours you said that he was missing. How is he doing today? What condition was he in? Look, we're in the South here. I understand Oklahoma. It's windy, a lot of sunshine directly on him. That's enough to drain somebody. Dehydration's going to set in. How was he?
Yep. You know what? He, surprisingly enough, for being gone that long, he was in relatively good shape. He was dehydrated. He was sunburned. It was a hot day yesterday with, just direct sunlight on him the whole time. One of the things that complicates his case is he's also diabetic. So I don't know if he had his, any medication for that. He was admitted to the hospital last night. I've talked with his father this morning. They kept him overnight for observation. He was still asleep, but doing well considering the circumstances.
Steve, with everything that we've seen around the country of media people being taken for granted at some of these protests and some of these riots, thank you for being there, and thank you for being a part of what's needed, as those are who are in those riots and having to cover that for us. But thank you, man.
All right, appreciate it. We were just glad to be there. Right place, right time, and it has a good ending and we cover so many of these where it doesn't. So just glad to be a part of that.
Steve, thanks, buddy. Again, we appreciate it. There's been so much talks about what's happening in the media, and seeing Steve, seeing his chopper pilot be able to sit down and putting the story aside for a moment and making sure that lives are okay. It's fantastic to see, and Steve, obviously, thank you. We appreciate that effort. Before we go, it is a sweet day because it is National Donut Day. Yeah, it's annually celebrated on the first Friday of June. Beyond the traditional giveaways happening this year, there's special promotions for healthcare workers and first responders because we are still in the middle of a pandemic. Whether it's glazed, sprinkled, chocolate, cake, donuts, whatever you might like, find a way to go out and enjoy one. Henry's behind our camera over here. Henry, did you get one of those donuts I had brought in? Good, thank you. I actually did not have any donuts today. That's weird. Maybe I'm just watching that waistline right there. I'm afraid that's going to start sticking out right there. See right there? Yeah, I can't do that. Have a great weekend, folks. See you Monday.